Welcome back! It's been a while since I've made one of these videos, and I apologize about that profusely. Today, in this video, we're going to be talking about Pantomime, which is the second unit for the 6th grade curriculum. And if you will see here, if it'll go to the next slide. There it is. There are significantly fewer things we're going to cover in each of these videos from now on, because these videos have been way too long. So you're welcome. Again, it's been a while since we have looked at this together if you are watching these videos as I'm making them. So as a quick reminder and overview, 6th grade, the semester is focused on acting skills, and each of those units build on top of each other. So this being the second unit, scholars will have just finished the first unit, which is acting basics, where they do the lip sync performance. And so now we're moving on to pantomime. So in these videos, we're now just going to focus on a quick rundown of the daily breakdown, and then an overview of the final summative assessment. So the first day of the pantomime unit, I like to start by playing a game of charades. It makes the unit fun and accessible. Pantomime is a weird word. They've usually not heard of it. Lots of kids and adults have weird associations with mimes, and so starting with a game of charades makes it something that's usually more familiar and something they're more invested in. I like to increase their investment at the beginning of each unit as much as I can. If you'll notice, there's only a few rules for pantomime that I've outlined. It's easier to remember. This is really the first or second time we're going through a set of rules for things that they're going to have to remember through the course of the unit. I also really like this unit coming as the second one of the year because it really makes the kids focus on specificity. And for me, as a teacher, that's one of the things I hammer home a lot. It needs to be specific. It needs to have more specificity. It needs to have greater detail. That's something that I come back to over and over again. So day 2, the scholars go through and they work in groups to create tableaus. So I like to start this class with showing them just still images that tell a really clear story, that use a lot of body language, and talk to them about body language and facial expressions. And then we work as a group to create a scenario, and then I split them into smaller groups, and they have to create tableaus based on some prompts that I give them, and then they have to show them to the group, and the rest of the group should be able to figure out what their tableau is of. Sometime in day 1 or 2, the scholars need to be given the rubric for the final project, because day 3 is the first day they're interacting with it directly. So on day 3, the scholars are supposed to bring an object that is significant to them, an object that represents something they really love about life on Earth. I know we haven't gotten to the summative assessment yet, but it's scholars pantomiming to aliens something they love about life on Earth, and they have to actually pantomime the object they bring with them that day. So the goal is for them to be able to sort of do a version of show and tell, but talk about why they like it, show what it does, so that they've got the object there, and you can sort of check as a teacher, make sure that it's appropriate. You can get some sort of red flags early about, wow, that's going to be really difficult, or maybe that's too easy, or 7 kids are doing the same thing, so I've got to be sure they're not doing the exact same performance. It's a great place for you to check in about the direction they're going in their project. There we go. So on day 4, recall, emotional, and sensory recall is something that is a 6th grade specific teak. I am not genuinely a huge fan of that kind of stuff, mostly because there's always a possibility of opening up something that I don't feel qualified helping a kid come back from, because who knows where trauma or things like that live in their lives. So I rather intentionally avoid emotional recall when they're this young. I don't really like it with adults either, but anyway. So I use sensory recall because that feels a lot less risky. So they've had the object in class the day before that they chose, you can either have the kids bring the object again this class, or they can be doing this class completely from memory. I like to have objects around in my classroom that I can hand out to kids who have figured out halfway through class that their object is way too difficult, who forgot to bring one the first day and forgot to bring one today, so that I can hand them things and they can still get this project done. But sensory recall, I usually have them work with the object for a while, and then they have to do some activities with it. They have to pick it up and smell it and all this other stuff, and then I make them put it away, and they have to do all that again using specificity, making it look exactly the same, just with the object in their backpack or in their desk. So day 5 and 6, which are sort of two parts of the same day. The planning that I have kids do, I always have them do on worksheets, their planning pages. I want them to really visualize their thought process. It also gives me a way to sort of help them figure out how to think about these things, because I'm giving them these chunked questions that sort of ask them to think about things in a certain order. A lot of them sort of need that scaffolding about just how to think about it. It's not that they can't do it, they just don't have a process for how to. They have to turn those pages in and get them checked by me before they can move on and start rehearsing. Sometimes that means I have half a dozen kids who don't want to start rehearsing yet because they're worried people will look at them. I have a really small classroom, and I utilize my hallway in those moments, and send some of those kids out in the hall so that they don't feel quite as embarrassed. They should at some point get to rehearsing, and this is a great place. We talked earlier, I think I've talked at some point, maybe in a video, maybe in a collab day, about chunking out rehearsal time, where you can use that. This is a great time to give peer feedback. Of course, there should be teacher feedback happening here. And then on the 7th day of this, kids are going to do their performance. I have had some classes get really into this, and they actually make their own masks and sort of dress up as aliens in class so that they look like aliens when they're out in the audience, which is pretty adorable. If that helps increase the audience participation and focus in your room, totally do it. Plus, it's a lot of fun. What you don't have pictured on here is day 8. Day 8 is the reflection day that my classes do at the end of every unit. I have talked about them already, and I didn't want to take up a whole slide just for that, so you know they're there, I know they're there. It's nothing new and exciting. So, for the summative assessment, this is one of my favorites. The aliens have landed. They speak no Earth languages, and so the kids are tasked with communicating to them something that they love about Earth. I think it's great. IB may give me a little flack about it because they want the summative assessment setups to be realistic, but you can't tell me this isn't going to happen. And I find that the kids have higher investment if the scenarios are slightly wacky. It makes them more playful, and that's definitely something that we're trying to pull out of some of these kids. Some kids are naturally playful, but I find a lot of kids, by the time they hit middle school, have already started freaking out about how they look in public. And so reminding them that they can play actually helps them do better. So I give them this. These are the actual specific breakdowns of things that I need. Some of these show up on the rubric, and honestly, some of them don't. I don't give them a grade on if they fall in the time, although I do time it for at least 30 seconds, and if they're less than 30 seconds, we all just sit there and stare at them. But essentially, they have to bring an important object, so whatever activity they're showing about life on Earth, if that's they love cooking, they love walking their dog, they love whatever, it should have something physical that goes with it that they have to pantomime. The audience is going to guess what their activity is. So usually during rehearsal for this unit, I don't have the kids give each other a lot of feedback because that could influence their grade if another kid already knows. Because I do grade them on that. They have to follow the rules, and I give them a time. I feel really strongly about making the first couple projects in this class be solo units, because I have kids who are just freaked out that they have to take theater, honestly, and they will lean really heavily on their other castmates, scene mates, whatever we're doing. And so having them do solo projects first at least gives me a sense of what they can and can't do, and hopefully gives them a little bit more confidence and a little bit more of a skill set before we jump into groups and they start really leaning on other people. So this overview of the units, we're looking at B1, C1, and D2. So that's 3 strands in this unit. That can feel like a lot when you're grading. And I'll talk in a second about how I actually grade in the moment. So criterion B, which is about demonstrating that they've acquired and developed the skills. The bullet points under there are about, did they follow the rules? And could their action be guessed? Because that relates to specificity, which is, again, one of my favorite theater teacher words. Criterion C is about their planning. So those planning sheets that they have to do and get checked off before they can go through and rehearse, I usually pick those up so I can actually put the grades for those worksheets in before or after they perform, and I don't even have to worry about grading that section during their actual performance. And then criterion D is about the object. Is it a good representation of life on Earth? And did they recreate it well? So choosing an object carefully is important. And that's part of the reason I think it's important to give kids the rubric before you have them bring in that object on day 3, so that they really understand that, like, I'm looking, 40 points out of 100 points for this project is based on that object. While I'm going through and watching their performances, I will just go in and circle whatever score they got. So this very first bullet point in each of these B boxes is about the level of specificity and detail in their performance. So if I feel like they were specific and detailed, but not extremely specific and detailed, I would circle the little bullet point. I'm going to put animation here, I promise. Hope it's there already. Circle that little bullet dash next to performance is specific and detailed in box 5 and 6. And then in the rubrics I give the kids that they have to turn back into me to get graded, it's got a point value for every circle that's in that box. So it says here that it's 7.5 out of 10 points. So every circle they get in that box is 7.5 points. Makes the math pretty easy, which is great because I'm really bad at math. All right, couple quick notes and then we'll be done. I know, it's magic. So this is the slide I'd like to put in about, this is a 6th grade unit. If you're interested in teaching a unit like this to kids who aren't in 6th grade, here are some of my suggestions about ways it occurred to me to sort of level it up and scaffold. Obviously lengthening the presentation, making the presentation length part of the grade. All of those things are options. You could require more objects. So not just 1, possibly bump it up to 2. You could also require them to interact with another person if you wanted to make this a partner project, or you could make them interact with a person who's not there, which is definitely challenging. Or they could pantomime more unusual objects. You could bring some things in that you think would be unfamiliar to your scholars and challenging to recreate, and have them pantomime those. So when I was taught about differentiation, I was taught you should think about your summative assessment and you should think about 3 specific groups of kids. Your ELL scholars, your scholars who need extra support. These are babies who are in SPED. These are babies in 504. These are kids you also just, need a little bit of help to get up to the level that you're asking everyone to be at. And then your high scholars who are easily going to achieve what you're asking everyone else. So for my ELL scholars, when I say reflections, I mean not just the reflections they do at the end of the unit, but also the feedback that they're giving for each scholar about what they think their pantomime is. That's sort of guessing as an alien. They'd be getting sentence stems for that. The scholars who need extra supports, modified expectations for performing. So if it is really difficult for a kid to work on their fine motor skills, the level of specificity and detail might be changed for them so that they can still be challenged but meet it, that kind of stuff. And then all of those things I went through and talked about on the last slide are ways you could scaffold up for kids who need an extra challenge. Okay, that's it. You know how to get a hold of me. I will see you later. Have a good day.